Whoever's got their sound on, could you please, who just entered, please silence that. Okay, back to where I was. Welcome to those of you who just entered. Back to what I was talking about. There's a website for this course. I won't re-explain all the things I did. I am now recording this, so I will post this later. So the website, fairly simple. There's a homepage, right? Actually, this homepage, you can pretty much, if you want an overview of what's covered in the course, or ideally, if we get through everything, what will be covered in this course, then you can look here. The only thing that's really important on the first homepage is this course is divided into blocks, thematic blocks. There's an introduction block. There's a scientific revolution block. You can see that right here, the title. There's a state and social contract block, enlightenment and its critics, modernity beyond enlightenment. Those are the blocks. Now, under each block on the home page, if you click, see it says explore introduction, right? And it says 404 not found. Why does it say that? Oh, my links. I need to fix my links because I changed I can't show you. Oh, this is a problem. I can show you another way. Hang on one second. So this course used to be called CVSP 203. Yeah. I changed the web address of the page, and so I forgot to change all the subdomain names. So all my pages are linked back to a 203 domain that doesn't exist anymore, which I can quickly, but I'll just go into where I edit it and I can show you these pages, so no worries. Okay, here we go. So if you were to go to the introduction, let's see, I have to go to my pages here. If you were to click on introduction, what you would find is this page. So this is it has lectures from the past about the information in this block, some other things, PowerPoints, basically a catch-all for extra information and helps and so on related to that group of texts. That's what it is. So when we start each block, I would suggest that you go to this section and look around a little bit. It includes biographies and galleries related to the authors that we are reading in this section. So it gives you some familiarity with them. And then usually at the bottom here, there's some extra things. These are not required, but if you're interested, if you're particularly interested in early modern astronomy or so on, these are just things that I found interesting that I posted, right? So for instance, in the introduction, we're going to start by reading Nicholas Copernicus, right? And so here you'll find there's a gallery that tells you all about Copernicus and his history a little bit through pictures. And most of these pictures have subtitles that are informative and will tell you something about that, right? I took some time to craft this, try to make it look nice. And then there's a little bit of information here about Copernicus and his dates. This is a course that we're reading texts in the context of their times and history. And so knowing when things were written, who they were written by, what their nationality was, something of their biography, that is actually very important in a course like this. So that's why this is here. As I said, other lectures. So this is what you will find on the home page once I relink everything properly, which I'll do today. And there's one for each block. Now, what else here? So the main thing, so I said that's all that's really important on the homepage for you. The main thing is this Zoom classes grading contact link. This is where you'll find pretty much everything. So let me open that here. Okay, so I didn't even, here, why don't I do that right now? Okay. If you're wondering about the 203 thing, the current 203 is actually the 203 that was taught like 20 years ago. They went back to that. And then the 203 from last year's is now called 208, right? So a little jumping around there. So here you'll find the links for, we won't have a class blog. This is for normal semesters. How to contact me, the grading criteria, the common syllabus for this course, and a link to this thing called the Socrative, which is a quiz website which I use for this course, and which you will become very familiar with right after we're done today, right? Hopefully. So here you'll find, what will you find? You'll find the schedule, right? Fall 2020, September 8, we're just introducing the course and it's live, right? So some of the days, like on Thursday, we will not meet live. On Thursday, there will be a video, and the video will be followed by a quiz, right? Usually the videos will not be an hour and 15 minutes. That would be insane for both of us. But so there's a video, it's about 45 minutes or something, or there's 2 videos, and then there's a quiz that you take on Socrative immediately after you're done. And those are, you'll become familiar with how that works today. Because I have a kind of dummy quiz. This here is a little video. I don't know how long it is. It's just 10 minutes or something. And it's exactly about plagiarism and the Socrative platform, right? So I have to tell you all about plagiarism. There's not a lot of chance to plagiarize in this class, but this is something we're required, and apparently is very, very important, because especially during these courses, people tend to cheat. So if you're a good student, you should be very glad that we're trying to catch as many plagiarizers as possible, because they're cheating you partially. But watching this video, the main point of this video, in fact, is to, I talk about plagiarism, and then I direct you to go to this Socrative platform and take a quiz about plagiarism. And that's really just to introduce you to the, right. I'm not gonna, I mean, I'll look at what scores you got, but it's not that important. The main thing is you'll become familiar with how to do this. Essentially what you do, so there's a link here, right? Don't forget to take the quiz. When you click that, you will get a website. Let me just open up a second tab. You'll get a website that looks like this. There's also an app. You can do it on your phone, apparently. When you go to log in, you log in as student, right? And then you put a room name. The room name is CVSP208M. Should ask you for your name next. If your internet is working, yeah, name. Click, and you get the first question. You answer all the questions, and it says something like waiting for teacher to do something, right? You're done, yeah? So that's it. You'll do this soon. Any questions so far? All very, very simple. Meant to be. Okay, so this is the schedule. If it's live, we're live. If it says video and quiz, then we're doing a video and a quiz, right? So September 10th, Introduction to the Modern Period video and quiz. Here are 2 videos for Thursday, and here is the quiz. Now, the Socrative platform only allows me to administer 1 quiz at a time. Not to one person at a time, you can all take it at the same time, but I can't have the quiz about plagiarism open and running the same time I have the quiz for introduction and so on running. So you only have a small window to do these quizzes. I can reopen them if you have some really pressing reason you can't do it in that time period or something happens. I can do it, but I can't do it while I have another one, so it can get messy. So do the quizzes basically immediately after you watch the videos. That would be best. But I will try to give you some information. Like here I say, the quiz will be opened at 6 p.m. on Thursday, right? And then I will close the quiz around 6 a.m. on the next morning. Again, under each of these things, you'll find videos, but here, for instance, you'll also find the PowerPoint that I used during the video so that you can have it open and follow the PowerPoint at the same time, and the PDF of what I'm saying, more or less, not all of it. Actually, this PDF only covers about the second half of what I say in this video. So if you just open the PDF and read it, you'll miss about half of what I say. So here, and so this is the schedule, and I can change this, unlike other things on the CVSP website. You'll find stuff, just ignore it. If they post a schedule or whatever, that's just a dummy thing there. And here I can change this almost immediately. And this, so if you're ever wondering what's going on, come here, and this will let you know that. As you can see, there's a lot of material here. And if you're wondering, the schedule is really only accurate until about the middle of October, because this course, both because of the format we're doing it in, and the fact this is only really the first time going through this exact course in this way, electronically and so on. What pace will we move at? I don't know. Right? We may take more time on some things and less time on others. And really, I try to make, tell you now, this course is about you. I know this material as much as I ever want to know it. I love all this material. I specialize in this period. I don't need to learn about it. I don't like listening to myself talk or being on video. This is all just for your benefit. So if I'm going too quickly or too slowly or whatever, just tell me and we'll change, because I don't have any schedule to meet. No one is going to come and ask me, did you cover all the texts in the semester? You know, did you do it? No, no one's ever going to know. The key barometer of what we do is your experience of this course, right? So if you let me know about that, I can make adjustments and those kinds of things, right? But essentially what this course is, I had to admit someone. Essentially what this course is we read a series of texts. These texts are from the modern period, meaning, anyone guess what period of history that is, date-wise? Joy, do you have any idea? No?
Not really.
Not really. Anyone else? Safa, you shook your head yes. It's always a dangerous thing to do. No? Guess. Just someone guess. It doesn't matter. What the modern period?
1500.
What?
1500?
Did you say 1600s or what?
No. 1800 to, I don't know, I'm not sure.
So this is a good thing to talk about, because this is, of course, about the modern period. Intellectuals, academics use words in strange ways. Modern means from about for us, about the year, really about, well, we're going to start at 1543, right? Doesn't sound too modern to you, I suppose. 1543. This is when Copernicus published On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres. It's also the year he died. And the end of the course, if we get there, is about 1830. So that's the far end of the course, modernity. Why do we call this modernity? Doesn't sound modern, right? It's a complicated story, but in essence, You have the ancient period, which you might have studied in 201, the medieval period, then the Renaissance, and then kind of when science, modern science, mathematical sciences started going, and there was a move from kind of the medieval social structure, and in the medieval times, of course, the European society was dominated by the Catholic Church and controlled by the Catholic Church. As Protestantism kind of broke up the power of the Catholic Church, society started to change. You had a beginning of a move towards, not really for a long time, but during this period, democratic societies begin to arise, right? In this period, you get the first kind of constitutions, but at the very end. But all that movement, that social movement that culminates with modern societies, what we would call, that's modernity and early modernity, right? So kind of that moment when things seem to start to shift towards the kind of world you and I now exist in, that's called modernity, all right? So really this is about crossroads of modernity, or one, before this course used to be called The Making of the Modern World, because it's about the founding of and the fight for the kinds of things that you and I now take for granted as typical aspects, you know, human rights. Before the period in which we're going to talk about, there was no conception of human rights whatsoever, right? People were valued based upon all kinds of various things, but had nothing to do with their humanity. Was their social class, for instance, nobility or peasant or so on. Slavery was an absolutely normal part of, say, the ancient and the medieval world. The idea that certain human beings were of no value and could be property was absolutely normal. But by the end of the period we're talking about, the common sense, just as today, is that human beings are intrinsically valuable. Slavery should be abolished if it hasn't been abolished, right? All these kinds of things, right? Human freedom is important. Human expression is important. Creativity, all these things were not valued, you'll see. And I'll talk about this in the lecture later, but that's kind of the period we're talking about when all of this changed. Okay, and some of the authors, so you see we'll start talking about Copernicus, right? I'm sure you've all heard of Nicholas Copernicus. The first section introducing the course is about Copernicus. Bruno, very interesting Italian Copernican philosopher. Alexander Pope, this book, An Essay on Man, is one of the, or it's a poem, of course, one of the absolutely iconic works of the period, kind of in poetry, expressing the worldview of the modern period, right? In this Essay on Man. Someone wrote even in the period, someone wrote a parody of it called An Essay on Woman, right? But we're not going to read that. It's a parody. Then we will look at a section on the scientific revolution, right? Francis Bacon, Descartes. Some of you probably read Descartes before. We're going to read Descartes in a slightly different way. Descartes usually read in philosophy courses, and they talk about his views of the immortality of the soul and all these things. But generally, I'm a philosopher. I teach philosophy classes, and we tend to ignore the actual thing that was important about Descartes and what he was actually fighting for, because that has to do with early modern science. All that philosophy was in service of trying to sell to the world, the European world at the time, including the Catholic Church, a new vision of modern science. In fact, the one kind of shared by Copernicus. And he says this in many points, and all that philosophy, proof of the immortality of the soul, proofs of the existence of God, and so on, were subservient to that goal. But we don't usually talk about that in philosophy because we're interested in the philosophical things, right? Here we're gonna read those same things, but we're gonna put them in the context, the historical and intellectual context in which he talked about them, right? So we're gonna look at them in a different way. Then we move to a section on state and social contract. So as I said, you know, human rights, democracy, and so on, these are ideas that were invented in the form that we have them during this period. And that had to be argued for, and some of the major figures to do this are Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Rousseau. So we'll look at these in this section. Many of you have probably heard of Hobbes and Locke before, yes? Some of you even read Hobbes and Locke before. You'll notice we'll read them in a slightly different way, hopefully. Then if we do it, and sometimes we don't do all of these sections, but the next section is on Enlightenment and its critics. In this period, there's a movement that's often referred to as the Enlightenment. You probably, if you had a French education, you probably heard a lot about the Enlightenment. This was not the whole period. Sometimes it's treated as if this is really what was going on in this entire period. That's sometimes even called the Enlightenment. Some 20 years ago or something, this course was called the Enlightenment and something else, right? But that's not really accurate because the Enlightenment was kind of a much smaller movement within modernity. And it had to do with a thematized question, right? About what it means to advance and to progress. What does it mean for humankind to move forward? And what does it mean to be forward of someone else, right? Like, does it mean to have more knowledge? Or is it possible to have more knowledge and yet in some way be more ignorant than others? Maybe wisdom and knowledge are not the same thing, right? Maybe you need knowledge, but knowledge isn't enough. Or maybe you don't even need knowledge, right? And there's a debate about whether European society is more advanced than the rest of the world. And it was generally this is why the French are often associated with the Enlightenment, because many of the French did express a very strong view that they were better than the rest of the world, and they had advanced beyond, and it was in some sense their job to educate the rest of the world and make them as smart and good as Frenchmen, right? Now, there were, of course, people who resisted that as well at the same time. And tried to articulate a different idea of enlightenment that didn't require one person to necessarily be better than another, right? So how could you be enlightened without being more advanced, right? That's a big question, but you might say it's possible. Maybe enlightenment has something to do with recognizing that other people may be different, but they're not worse than you. Respecting difference and so on. So this is a whole big debate. Here we read Kant, a German philosopher named Herder, and usually a French philosopher or Condillac. The last part of the course is about the period that follows the Enlightenment. This starts about in the 1790s, maybe the late 1780s. You're very familiar with the products of this change. So essentially what happens in the beginning, in the 1540s and so on, you get the big boom of interest in modern science and the kind of what happens when something new comes about. Everybody is over enthusiastic and they believe it's going to solve all their problems, and they try to extend it to every part of society, right? And this is what happened when modern science was invented. Political science, which we're going to read, is like an extension of modern science into the political realm. Aesthetics and art theory and all these things were invented during the period as extensions of the methods of science into different realms of human experience. Almost everything you study at the university, no matter what your major is, your major was invented probably during the period that we're going to study. Unless you're studying mathematics, right? Because mathematics is quite an old science, or you're studying philosophy. But if you're studying political science, if you're studying literature as a science, if you're studying art theory, if you're studying anything within the social sciences, all those things were invented. Even physics in modern form was invented in this period as the idea of extending scientific practice to some domain, right? Even the study of like probability, that was invented in this period because it was the extension of science to random events. Can you actually calculate and determine the rules of randomness, right? That idea sounds kind of counterintuitive, but that's exactly shows you in this period what people were thinking. Like, maybe we can master everything through science, even randomness, right? Interest in things like insurance, like the mathematics of insurance and things like this were invented in this period, because that's another way of using mathematics to try to control what's going on in the world, right? To secure ourselves against accidents and so on. So that kind of culminates in the Enlightenment with this kind of very optimistic idea that through the application of science, European society has advanced. And then what always happens? Well, things never meet the expectations. The world does not go well. All human beings don't suddenly become better. Society doesn't become better. The rulers don't become better. They become a little bit better, but not what anyone was expecting. And so in about the 1790s, throughout Europe, intellectuals started to wonder what was wrong. Things had not gone the way they had expected. You know, the French Revolution, this was one of the great examples of idealism gone wrong, right? We're going to have a new world of equality and brotherhood and freedom and so on. And instead, the French are all running around cutting each other's heads off, right? That doesn't seem to be advancement by any means. And you see this as well, right? We see this in our contemporary world. Democracy tries to come to all kinds of societies, right? In the Middle East, for instance, and everyone is very optimistic. And what happens? It never seems to turn out, because there's something missing in just theorizing democracy. You have to somehow change people. And so in the 1790s, intellectuals started to feel there was a gap and something they didn't understand about a gap between recognizing intellectually the way things should be and actually being that, living that way. Right? And how can society become more than theoretically better than it was? How can people be improved? And so they turned to interest in things about education and about changing people's character. And this led to this period called Romanticism. So modernity beyond enlightenment, part of it is Romanticism. Some of you have heard of Romanticism? Anyone know what that is? Tamara, you nodded. Again, a dangerous thing to do. What do you want? What is it? Romanticism. We can't hear you. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wasn't it when literature started like booming, and I'm not sure, but I know a period in the 1800s or 1700s.
It's actually pretty hard to explain what it is. You're right, it is a period, well, not just literature, I mean, there was literature before and after, but a certain kind of literature. Some of you have heard of Frankenstein, this kind of literature. This is Romanticism. The Nutcracker, you've probably seen the play or the ballet, the Nutcracker, but that's actually a short story written by a writer, a German romantic writer. Romanticism it's complicated. We'll look at it at the end of this course, but in a certain sense, it's a reaction against the Enlightenment. So just take what the Enlightenment thought, that science and mathematics and so on would advance human history, democracy, moving away from organized religion, right? And so on, and go the opposite of that in a certain sense. Romanticism is about breaking the rules, right? It's about creativity. Within Romanticism, there's a lot of mysticism. They didn't go back to like Catholicism, of course, but they felt that one thing that was missing in the Enlightenment view was a spiritualism, right? And so they started to think, well, maybe nature is not what science tells us. Maybe it's much more than that. This is where you get like Frankenstein, right? It's like science fiction in a way. But the underlying is this idea they're fascinated by, maybe they're fascinated with things that don't seem to be explained through physical mathematical sciences. So life, for instance, right? That's what Frankenstein's all about. Creating life. It's a very, very romantic idea. Why are they interested in this? Because they feel this is what was missing. Maybe this is the thing. Also, they become very interested in the things that don't seem to be part of the scientific tradition, like folk art, folk poetry. This is also why literature changes. People start going around the Grimm fairy tales. Some of you have heard of the Grimm fairy tales, like Cinderella, but Aschputtel, right? These different stories. This was part of these two guys, the Grimm brothers, were major figures in Romanticism. And one of their ideas was that human creativity is really valuable. And most of human creativity doesn't take place by aesthete artists, but by everyday people creating stories and so on. And so they traveled around and collected folk stories into these books, right? This was invented, this whole idea. In the medieval period, or ancient period, this would be nonsense. No one cared about these things, right? But in the Romanticism, they become objects of study and of intense interest, because they're interested in the creativity behind them and within them, and what they tell us about human cultures and so on. So, okay, that's an overview of the topics. The course ends, so this is about Romanticism, Schlegel, Faust. We also watched Hamlet as a film. I won't explain why quite yet, but you'll get to watch that later in the semester. And this takes us about from 1543 to around Goethe died in like 1830, 1840s, right? So that's the sweep of the course. Now for the things you really care about.
Professor?
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it seems like you haven't been checking the chat box. So whenever you get a chance to.
Yes, the chat box. I don't have it open up. Just a second. Yeah, there's so many little panels and things going on. I'm trying to keep my eye on letting people in, that the chat box can.
You could just open it to the right margin of the screen.
Yeah, is there something here that you wanted me to see in particular? I see it.
Well,
yeah.
I sent you a private message at the beginning. You could answer this later, but I was participating using the chat box, that's why.
I see. Okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you should send me an email about capacity issues and so on. And if anyone here is worried about, is not part of this course and is interested in capacity, my email is going to say one and the same thing to all of you, which is I have no control over capacity. I do not deal with that at all. The head of CVSP, Nadia Bouali, is in charge of determining capacity. The dean, those are the two people that would have something to say to you about that. Okay, so as I was saying, we should get to the grading. Let me do that. How have you guys been? Did any of you take summer classes? No? So
Yes.
You did, yeah? How did that go with the situation? So for some of you, this is your first time in an electronic course, yeah? You're doing this online.
I actually took summer
Yeah.
as the previous semester, and my major is computer science engineering. So it went pretty well for something that we had to apply like to apply practically rather than theoretically. I assume this should go well as well.
Yeah, yeah. My course, I did a course during the summer. It seems to go pretty well, but I know it's different for everyone, and we're definitely trying different methods. And part of this new methods is the grading policy is a little weird. I've yet to introduce you to a few of this, so a few things. I'm going to go through that here. Where is no, this is not the right one. Here we go. So it's very simple. Participation, preparation, and quizzes, right? It's 20% of your grade. What does that mean? So I said at the beginning of each live session, I will ask for volunteers. So that's the participation, right? You should try to participate, you know, frequently, but not necessarily all the time. And you'll be fine. You'll get full credit for that, right? If you never participate and you have no reason to never participate, then that will hurt you. If you're very, very eager to participate, I will notice, right? So that will help you. Textual annotations. What in the world is that? So the chat, in the chat, I am presently pasting a link. You should all get that link. That is a link to the texts we will read in this course. It's a
Professor, you sent it to me privately, so you should change that.
Yeah. Funny, the person who got it told me, but the people who didn't get it didn't say anything. There we go. So you can go to that link and download the course reader. It contains all the readings except for one at the very end of the course, which we may not even get to, right? The course reader, I have a copy of it open here somewhere. Let me drag it over. Looks like this. Copernicus, Bruno, Pope, yep, right thing, yeah. So it has everything. This should be very handy to you. You should all individually download it and have it on your machine. Now, each section, so for instance, introduction, this is the introduction section, right? Each section starts with questions you should read before reading the texts, right? Those are supposed to be just helpful. They also tell you the things that I'm interested in because I wrote all the questions. So you'll give you some clue as to how I look at the text and understand the text. That doesn't mean that's how you have to understand it, but those are certain things to focus on. And there are general, in each one, there are general questions you'll see. Let's get back to it. No, it's up here. Oh, I'm below it. So general questions that relate. So each of these sections is designed in a specific way. When this course was conceived, it was conceived not about the current 203 course, this old course from like 20 years ago. It kind of teaches you this period by saying, look, here's what this period was all about. Learn these main ideas, and that's it, all right? And this period of history, like all periods of history, isn't smooth. It's a conflict. Even though, for instance, there's the Enlightenment, everybody disagrees about what enlightenment is. Although there was early modern science, yes, true, everyone disagreed about what science means and how to conduct it. We still don't know what science is and why it works, right? But certainly when it first came about, the Descartes, for instance, and Bacon, two different people we're going to read, had completely opposite views of science. They saw science happening and they looked at it, and one saw white and one saw black, right? And that's interesting because there's a debate. There's always a debate going on in society and intellectual culture. It's never the case that everyone thinks the same thing. That's nonsense, right? So teaching you this period as if, well, then everybody became part of the Enlightenment and it's all just one thing. And then everybody did this and everybody thought that. That's not the way human society is, and you and I know that, right? So why not teach a course where within each block, the texts disagree with each other, right? So the point here is that when you're reading these texts, they are specifically selected to give different perspectives on the same topics, conflicting perspectives. These general questions, although we can look at each figure within a block individually, it's also important to compare them. We'll do a lot of comparing in this course. And these general questions are about large themes, but under those you should look for different views from authors about them. Okay, then there are specific questions, and then you have usually a picture of the author or something and their dates, and then you have the texts, right? The pages for the text that you have to read for each day are on the schedule. That's where you'll find those. Now you'll notice I have some little boxes here, and I have some highlighting, and I have some things drawn. I've annotated my text, yeah? This is called textual annotation. I'm picking out the things that are important, and I'm connecting them and making it so that when I look back at this text, I don't have to reread all of it. The fact I didn't mark a lot of this means it's not very interesting. It's not very important. This is the important part, right? And usually I have a scheme for myself, like maybe I underline the reasons that they give for things, right? Or maybe a main claim I underline in red, and the reason for it I underline in green, right? And so I know whenever I've underlined in green, that's their justification, their reason that they give me for saying it. You can diagram arguments, you can do all kinds of things, add tabs, and so on. So why do I show you this and talk about it? Often also, sometimes we'll talk about there are 3 points. It's good to like go in and see what those points are and how they match up. Like here in this sentence, he talks about one thing here and one thing here, and then he explains the first thing and then he explains the second thing, right? It's nice to have that diagrammed out so that you can connect them together and see it. This textual annotation, I show you it because you have to do it too. You have to do it in your copy of the reader, right? So all of you should, you don't need any special software to do it. You just open your reader in Adobe Reader. And if you go here, you click this open. I don't know if you can do, if you have a more advanced version of Adobe, you can probably do these things where you have bookmarks. But the main thing here is comment section, right? All Adobe Reader, the free version, you have all these tools that you can mark up your text, okay? And then you have to save it. Now, for each text that we do, you have to mark it up yourself as you read it. And the point of your markup is it's your own personal code, right? It's your own personal way of marking it up. You have to do it, and I have to see that you did it sufficiently to believe that you're really doing it. But exactly how you do it is up to you, right? But you have to do it, and that is graded. As you will see in the, I know there will be questions about this, but let me make sure. Okay, I have no one waiting to, okay. So textual annotations are 20% of the grade, right? Now, if you look at the schedule, if you went back to the schedule, I'm not gonna do it. On the schedule, you will see marked October 5th, third set of textual annotations due, right? What does that mean? That means on that day, the annotations for all the texts we have covered in class are due on that day, right? So it's basically what is due? Well, all the text that we have finished up to that point, those annotations. Now, this is going to be very easy. You'll have to do nothing to turn this in, because with each of you, I'm going to create, you'll each get an email, and we will create a folder in something called Dropbox. I'll give you all instructions about how to do this. And your reader will be, you'll put your reader in Dropbox. And I will automatically, it updates it, so I see the reader exactly as you see the reader. And so when your textual annotations are due on October 5th or whatever, you don't have to do anything if you've done them. If you've done your annotations, because I will be able to open your reader and check for myself, right? Are there questions on that? I'm pausing for questions. I've said a lot of things. Questions of any kind, any variety at this moment. I'm also checking the chat box if you want to ask a question there. I'll give a few seconds. No? No questions? Yeah, I didn't hear that. Could you speak again?
How detailed? Yeah, I didn't hear that. Could you speak again? I'm just asking, how detailed should the annotations be? Like, are we supposed to write comments next to the sentences be highlighted, or just? Okay. It doesn't have to be that detailed. I just okay.
Okay. This is an inevitable question. Tips on annotation on my page with Zoom classes, grading, and contact. This is some technical thing about saving on Adobe. If you have any problems, then maybe check out that little video. But here's a video about tips on annotation. So I take you through the process of annotating and tell you all about that, right? Essentially, the answer to your question is that you need to, I mean, I'm going to look that throughout all the text you have done something, and that you have done it with a purpose, right? Like, if you try to fake your annotations, like you're way behind on all your work, you open it up and you scribble some stuff in there, I'm going to be able to tell that that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because when you do annotations, your goal is to kind of process the text. You're going to mark the important things. You're going to mark out unimportant things, right? This is a very essential skill you should all be practicing in all your courses. It's a huge time saver. When I was writing my PhD, for instance, I knew, here's a book I need to know for my PhD, and I need to use it in my writing and so on. And I read this book from beginning to end, and when I'm half of the book, when I'm done, has usually, you know, this is like a print copy, because you want to copy, you use your books, right? They're just tools. I've had multiple copies of the same book because I use it for different purposes. But just go through and make, you know, if it was a book that I didn't want to destroy entirely, make a thin pencil line through entire pages, right? I just said, I don't need to read this ever again. So when I go back and I'm working on that book, I've already judged that 90% of that book I don't want to read again. It's not important, right? I read it once, it's finished, it's gone. So even marking things out is helpful, because later when you study for an exam or you review the material, which is the whole point of these annotations, you know, if you have to reread all the material a second time, that's a huge amount of time. No one has this. But if you have to just go back, I can remember one book, I broke the whole thing down into about 3 pages, right? This is the 3 pages. If I ever need to remind myself what was essential in that book and use it later, I've got the 3-page Word document that contains everything, right? And that was incredibly handy. And if you practice this in this course and in other courses, it's very handy. That's the goal, and that's what I expect to see there. So whatever I'll comment, and as I see your annotations, I'll let you know if I think you should do something differently or you're not doing it detailed enough. I wouldn't be worried about doing it detailed enough. I would worry about actually doing annotations that help you process the text. And you may discover along the way new ways of doing that, right? So that's my long answer, which is not a very specific answer. But there are, as I said, there's a video here with tips on annotation. Other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to the grading page to get through that. Keep hitting this X. I'm not used to doing this.
Professor?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but how frequently are we required to annotate? So each reading for each week, or?
You should be annotating as we go, as we read the texts, right? That's what you should be doing. But I'm not going to check them every day. I'm going to check them every Sunday.
Okay.
So on the schedule, you will see every Sunday with a date that says, first set of annotations due, second annotations due, third annotations due, and so on. Those are, even if they're not on the schedule, I will check them every Sunday and go through them, right? I mean, there may be possibilities I skip a Sunday, but probably not. So back to pages. Okay, but I'm in the wrong grading. Here we go. Video project. About the middle of the semester, you all have to do a video project. This is the other reason we will share this Dropbox folder, because you can just make your video and put it in the Dropbox, right? So it'll be very, very simple. So this is a 10 to 15 minute video comparing two authors from the course, right? We'll talk about this more when we get to it, but it's nothing complicated. Be as creative as you like. Students did, from some students, made like PowerPoints and went through their PowerPoints. Some students, one of the students posted a bunch of pictures he had drawn on his wall and explained the pictures as he went through. You can do this however you like. But the main idea is you have to pick two authors that we talk about and compare them in some very specific way, right? And hopefully about something that we didn't cover in the course ourselves. So some other comparison, although you could do something we did talk about, but in a slightly different way. So that's 20%. As far as how is that graded, this is graded more or less on a good effort basis, right? I will give you feedback if you ask for individual feedback on your grade on that. I mean, I will give you a grade and I will tell you why, right? I will just tell you, we can talk about it, or I can send you an email giving you the reasoning. But essentially, it's going to be the obvious things. It's not going to be your video editing. It's not going to be your sound quality. It's going to be, did you present some clear ideas? Did you show that you, put some work into it? Did you say things that were incorrect? Maybe that could be a problem, right? If you don't know what you're talking about in your video, that would be an issue. You're going to talk about the texts though, comparing the authors through their texts, right? Not just like Descartes was a small French man, which is different from Hobbes, who was a fat Englishman. You're not going to compare them like this. You're going to compare them actually through their texts that we read, right? So that's, but we'll talk about that more, and I'll give you more information on that towards the middle of the semester. The final exam is 40%, and it is an oral exam. So you and I will meet individually, every single one of you, over a period of 2 days, because I have 2 sections like this. for 15 minutes. You will have a 15-minute slot, and we will have a conversation. I will ask you questions, usually questions covering about 3 different areas in the course. And if you can't tell me much about one area, I might switch to another, and I might ask follow-up questions. But essentially, it's a kind of informal discussion when you happen to be being graded, right? As I said, 15 minutes. The kinds of questions you might be asked that's very easy to answer if you ask me what kind of questions. The kinds of questions you see at the beginning of every single section of the reader. Those are the kinds of questions I will ask you. So you have about 500 examples of the kinds of questions I might ask you in the oral exam. Now, the question that I ask you in the oral exam is probably not so important, because not as much as an essay, right? If I were to ask you to write an essay on a question, I'm going to make you stick very closely to that essay. And if you talk about other stuff, I'm not going to be interested, right? But in an oral exam, this is I gave oral exams in the summer. This goes really, really nicely. You shouldn't be terrified by it. I'm fairly friendly. If you don't know something, I'm not going to laugh at you or, you know, whatever. I might be slightly disappointed. But usually I'll just ask you something else to figure out what you do know, right? That's something you don't get on an exam. Professors don't usually say, well, you don't know this question, so here's another question, right? They just, you don't know it, done. But in an oral exam, I want to hear what you know, and kind of I can probe and I can see, oh, well, this part of the course you fell out of, but this one you knew really well, right? And that might help you somewhat, right? Whereas I can't do that if it's just essays. You may completely not have anything that you know really well show up on an essay exam. Whereas here I get to kind of probe and see really and understand how well you absorbed the course, right? And that's it. Here's the AUB grading scheme. If you're, I don't know if you guys are probably individually, some of you get number grades, some of you get letter grades. That's the equivalency there. Any questions about the grading? Now is the time.
Is there a possibility that we could get on any of those percentages a full grade?
A full grade? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
What's the point of your question? I mean,
Like, what's the maximum we can score on this course, knowing that we're doing the maximum effort we can, we're following the flow of the course, and
what is the real, you're asking kind of like what really is the highest grade I give?
yes.
Well, if you're looking at numbers, I don't know if I've given an A+ before. Letter wise, I have given a 93 before.
All right.
But you're gonna have to be pretty good, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to be better than everyone else by some degree, right? I mean, typically, so there are averages, you know, CBSP is supposed to have an average of about a B+. My courses probably have that average, or sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower. It depends on the semester, right? It's harder. I will say this, and I don't know if it's good to tell you, but because the grading is electronically, we might be able to have all kinds of courses that are theoretically good, but as you probably can guess, grading becomes almost impossible in this kind of a course, because all the normal ways of evaluating students don't work anymore, because students can just cheat, right? I know if I give you even a real-time test, there will be a WhatsApp group created about the exam in real time, and you'll be sharing, some of you will be sharing answers and so on. And then when a student gets a good grade, like an A minus, they'll come to me and say, but everyone else cheated. Why did I get an A minus and they got A's? It's not fair because they didn't know anything and they got all their grades up, all the things up at WhatsApp. This is not a theoretical possibility. This is a real fact that I know happens. So grading, this is the big problem with electronic courses. No one has ever solved it. MIT hasn't solved it. No one has solved how you can fairly grade students. The only thing I know of, and that's why I give the oral exam, is the oral exams, right? So about grades, these other things, you're more, textual annotations, you're gonna more or less be the same as everyone else, right? Your video project, there you can show some additional effort, probably. Participation in quizzes. Here, definitely you can do really, really well, and other people can do really, really poorly. And this will distinguish you. Because the quizzes, there are some students who won't get half the quiz questions because they didn't read the material or they didn't pay attention to the video, right? And participation, you can't fake participation. Yeah. And the oral exam. So those are the real things where you can stand out from others, right? And you can too also in the annotations, but not as much.
True. Yeah.
And really, how does it go grading? Really high grades go to students who are doing their very best and definitely better and putting in more effort than other students, right? It's really relative.
Professor?
Yeah, go ahead.
True. Thank you.
Sure.
The notes we take during the videos, can we use them in the quiz?
The notes you take, you're at home, you're doing whatever. You can, I can't stop you. You can use your cat during the quiz if you want. Yeah. I have no control. So why say that I do have control when I don't? So, but the quiz is always going to be about information in the video, right? So you have to watch the video and pay attention. And I would suggest you take notes and use those notes when you answer but really, the quizzes are not generally, unless sometimes I'll have a question that's there just to make sure you watch the video, right? So it's just like something that's going to be in the video. Could be like, what color shirt am I wearing in the video, right? Maybe I changed my shirt color midway through, so to trick you. I don't know.
Okay.
So you just look at the screenshot, you can't answer it. Or if you do, I know I got you, right? So I'm tricky too. But usually they're not going to be like that. They're going to be understanding questions, right? Did you understand? So I sometimes ask weird questions. Like a question I asked in the final exam to a student was, if you read Locke and you believed everything that John Locke said, and you wanted to become a slave, how would you do that? Right? But he never explains how to become a slave. But if you understand his theory, there are certain ways in which you can give up your right to being a free human being and ways that you cannot give up your right. For instance, you cannot voluntarily say, I am no longer a human being with freedom and rights. Why is an interesting question. It's because you don't belong to yourself. You belong to God, actually. So you can't do anything with yourself you want. But if you do certain other things like try to kill another human being, you lose your right to live and your right to be a human being, and you can be enslaved as a result of that. That's just an example of a kind of, the question is there not so that you can recall information, but to see if you understand what he thinks, then you should be able to guess what the answer to a question would be that he never answered for you. That's really the test of understanding authors. It's like, can you predict what they would say? I used to like this when I was a student. Like, I knew an author was going to talk about something in the next section and I had read the previous sections. And I would ask myself, what's he going to say about that? And after a while, you're almost like, I don't need to read the rest of the book because I know how this guy thinks. And he's always going to go back. And that's particularly about this period, because the period here, people are trying to apply specific methods of thinking to answer questions. If you understand the method, then you already know the answer to the question. You just need to apply the method. You don't have to read the author applying the method. Okay, sometimes you get surprised, so it's important to actually read what they said. But usually they're very consistent and logical. And once you get a hang of that logic, you understand the author. And then you can usually extrapolate what they thought. Other questions?
Professor, you know how you said the quiz would be open like tomorrow at 6, on Thursday at 6?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be open during class time? Isn't the video like 40 minutes?
Yeah, I can open that one earlier. There was a particular reason it was opened at that time previously. If you want it opened earlier, I can do that.
Oh, I thought they were all gonna be like that.
Usually the reason is because the previous quiz needs to still be open, you know? Because when I open one, I have to close another. So in that case, I say like 6 p.m. so that everybody has up through that time to finish the previous quiz. I can change those and adjust those as you like. Now, right now, there is a quiz open. It's the plagiarism quiz, which you should all go watch the video and take the quiz. It is now open. Other questions? If you have accommodations issues, you should email me, right? If you have difficulties, learning difficulties and so on, you should write, and you haven't already, you should contact the people at AUB that are associated with accommodations. And if you have official letters from doctors and so on, they can issue for you a letter of accommodation, which you have to send to me. If you already have a letter of accommodation, please send it to me. On accommodations, I'll keep this very brief. The way this course is designed, there's not really much need for accommodations, right? Maybe deadlines, but I've made things so flexible and so friendly to you, you know, that you can tell me, you let me know what I could do to help you, but for the most part, hopefully there's not a lot that we need to do or could do. But of course, I will address each of your specific concerns individually by email. Again, using my, I'll show you that real quick, just my contact page. Obviously, I don't have office hours, so we can meet on Zoom anytime, right? I'll probably delete this, but here is if you want to contact me through the website, you can do this. I don't know, it takes about a half an hour for anything put in here to actually show up in my inbox. But my suggestion is just always use my Gmail address here. I have that open all the time, whereas my AUB email, I check less frequently. Right. Also, AUB email, as I said, has issues with blocking certain kinds of emails and so on. So I really definitely prefer, if you need to contact me through my Gmail account right here. Okay. What other things?
Professor, will the links be added to the new version of the website by next week, by next session on Thursday?
I'm going to I'll fix the links. Hopefully I'll do it correctly. I'll fix the links tonight.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I guess that's, yes, that is urgent because you can't get to the video right now. You can't get to any of the pages right now. So I'll fix all that. I have another class after this, but after that, I will sit down and do it.
And how long do we have until we can complete the quiz for the plagiarism video?
When do you have until, at a minimum, until class time on Thursday? Yes?
Professor, where do we find the quiz?
Excuse me?
Where do we find the plagiarism quiz?
Once the links are fixed today, you will be able to go to this page, or not to this page, but to this website, and go to my main page, and there you will find the plagiarism quiz. In this, you'll find the video, and then you'll find the link to the quiz, right? Now, I should probably,
All right.
I might say in the video that the room name for the quiz is CVSP 203. I haven't checked if I said that because this is from the version I just gave. So the room name, put it now, CVSP 208M. Yeah. So make sure that you use the correct room name. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I think.
Yes, one last question.
Yeah.
Regarding Thursday's session, will we have a video or will we have a live session?
Just check the schedule, but as you will see, video.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
These videos together are a little longer
Would
than
we
the class
start?
session. Sorry about that. But for the most part, I'll keep the videos to 40 to 50 minutes at most. Just to remind everyone, someone who might have come later, the link to the reader, which is where you should immediately start looking at the readings, is in the chat. So I will send it again in the chat to everyone, okay? Any other questions?
The Thursday class, we start at 11 a.m. also?
Well, it's a video, so you start it whenever you click play.
Okay, and the quiz opens at the times you've set below in the description, right?
Yeah, and I'll make sure those are updated, but point is, yeah, ideally, I could close the plagiarism quiz on Wednesday evening so that the other one is just open all day Thursday. That's probably what I'll do. So make sure that you take the plagiarism quiz today or tomorrow. That's my advice. And I will put in the description below when the quizzes will open and close. Any other questions?
Yes, I just want to ask, do you suggest that we do the readings before watching the video? Or should they what exactly is
I
what
would
do you suggest?
generally reading so students are different, and I know sometimes these texts are difficult. Some of them are very difficult. It's just the period of history. Something we can't get around. Some of them are difficult because they're written in a style of English that is no longer used, thank goodness. And you'll see that you're going to learn a lot about reading 18th century English. This means actually a lot of the translations are easier to read because they're written in modern English or contemporary English. So like Hobbes will be very difficult. And so it may be the case, and students sometimes find it the case, that when they try to read the text before the lecture, they don't know what's going on, right? I would generally say try to. Also, it sometimes happens the other way. They haven't read the text, and so they have no idea. Now, I absolutely think you should read the text once through before we have a lecture, because you are going to be called on to participate. And when you participate, we're going to read. So in the live sections, what we're going to do 90% of the time is actually go through a piece of text and discuss it, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, right?
Sorry to interrupt, but I have
Practicing
a class in
reading.
4 minutes.
Someone's sound is on. So that's what we're going to do. And if you haven't read it, I don't know how you can really participate very easily in that. Other questions? Of course, you're all going to receive from me an invitation to join a Dropbox link, right? Right. So the link to the reader, you can download that. But if you're not familiar with Dropbox, I will invite you to join a folder, and you should download the free Dropbox application. And what happens there is when you download that application, it creates a folder in your Windows Explorer or your Mac Explorer, right? A folder labeled with the label Dropbox. And within that Dropbox folder is the folder that you and I share. And everything you put there and anything I put there, we can both share and see simultaneously. I even can see when you're working on it. So because I don't generally turn this thing off, I might this semester, I sometimes sit here working in the evenings and I can see Joy is now annotating her text. It gives a little pop-up on my screen, right? So I may be monitoring you. You may not know it. But it just gives me, I mean, I may close it though, because it's a bit annoying. But on the other hand, when I leave it open, I get a good sense of, I even can tell you what your schedules are afterwards, right? Like Joy on Thursday evenings tends to do her annotations and so on, right? Or someone has not touched their annotations in 3 weeks, right? I noticed this too. Good for better or worse, these things give me a little more information. Okay, I got Alexandra's chat. So, other questions? Otherwise, I'm.
Would it be,
Yeah.
just one last question. Would it be possible to download the text and annotate it by hand and then scan it and send it to you?
You could, but that would cause you a lot more trouble than is necessary.
All right.
Because scanning is, I don't know, scanning, and then you got to worry about the size and whatever. But if you prefer that, you could do it. But really, the free Adobe Acrobat annotation tools are just perfectly fine. But you could do that if you wanted to.
Okay.
Other questions? Anything I didn't cover? No? I don't have to talk about plagiarism because I have a video about that. That's why I made it.
Do the quizzes have a duration?
Say that again?
Do the quizzes have a duration, like 5 minutes for 6 questions?
No, just until I close it. You can't go backwards and forwards in a quiz, though. Once you answer a question, it disappears and a new question comes. But you don't want to spend a lot of time. You want to be prepared because internet problems. I've had students say in the middle of the video, my internet cut, and when I opened it back up, I couldn't start the quiz again. So you want to make sure you do it in a time when that's not likely to happen. If that does happen, we'll figure something out. Any other questions? No? Okay, then. I'll let you go a little early, and you can, maybe I'll fix the links right now. You can check it periodically. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Professor.
All
Have a
right.
good day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.